is Tanya and I'm from Project Zazi. The fact that you are here, I'm assuming that you know what OTR is. OTR is Off the Record. We are a youth social movement which is concerned with mental health, primarily youth led, looking at all of the different factors that affect mental health and well-being. So what I do in terms of working for Project Zazi, Zazi is a project that deals with Black, Asian and minority ethnic concerns. So all of the additional factors that could also impact upon mental health. So we're here in lockdown and I've been asked to do some poetry. Well, I'm going to do some poetry with you. I want to do this. I haven't been pushed into it, I promise you. And so hopefully the aim is to create like a sort of mini series and to give you tricks and tips and just exercises to help you to develop your writing so that you end up with a body of work. And so, excuse my finger, got a trigger finger at the moment, but I can still write. I'm left-handed. So we're going to start off how I always start off all of my workshops whenever I do them, and that is with a free write. So some of you are probably familiar with this, but for those of you who aren't, a free write is essentially just, it could be various, it could take place in various different forms, but in the most open form, a free write is writing for a set time period with no inhibitions. So not worrying about whether it makes sense, not judging yourself, not worrying about spelling, about grammar, not worrying about punctuation, or, you know, just being vulnerable, right? And normally if I was to do this in a workshop, I would say, oh no, you don't have to share. But this is for you. You can share it if you want, you don't have to. But I'm going to start off with a 5-minute free write. So I'm going to put this on pause and come back to you. I took a 5-minute break to do my free write. So oftentimes people say, oh, so what's the point in a free write? Why do we do free writes? And it could be for all sorts of reasons. But like for myself, I find that when I don't have a place to start, when I don't know what I'm going to write, it is that place to start. By not thinking about it, by just doing, by just being, like you allow yourself to tap into your unconscious thoughts, right? And then so you end up with things on the page which maybe you didn't even think you were thinking at the time. And so I generally don't read my free writes out, but just to give you an example of the fact that it doesn't have to make sense, reading it for the first time, and it says, can I read my own writing? Let's see. Okay, Bismillah. It says, what's on my mind? Try to think of something to say, want to be sublime and poetic, but I don't want to force myself to think too much, push my body to the depths of push my body to the depths where it can't swim. Sinking ships overboard. Sinking ships, woman overboard. I am overboard, not used to the pause. Calm has me feeling uncomfortable, trying to get to grips with my own silence, my own silo, my own growing. Who would have known? Growing has a sound that is normally drowned out by the busy and by the constant productivity. Beneath the blanket of things I have to do, places I have to go, I have to breathe. I have a scent, I have a sound. One day the earth stood still, and many of us survive, but there are even more of us that experience growing pains, but after that we thrived. Nothing glorious, nothing great, but what it does for me is that it gives me a place to start. So I've got my free write and I'm thinking, okay, so what is coming up? Growing, you know, the silence. These are some of the themes that are coming up. So my next exercise that I'm going to do is I want you to think about a word. In this case, I've got my word, I think. It is growing. So let's say the poem that we're going to write is going to be called Growing, right? And for this particular poem, it's not even really that difficult. All I want you to do is to just list all of the things that comes to your mind when you think of growing. It could be a phrase, it could be a sentence, it could be a word, it could be a memory, right? Don't try not to make it too long, like there was that time when I went to the park and just like phrases, you know, short phrases, a sentence maybe, but just think of all the things that comes to your mind when you think of growing. We're going to put a time constraint on this. So give yourself about, let's do 7 minutes. Let's do 7 minutes. Hopefully the sun won't be set by then, so I'm gonna put this on pause again. See you on the other side. Okay, so I'm sorry if the camera's in a slightly different angle. Had a bit of technical issues, but we are back after the break. Okay, so essentially what I asked you to do was to make a list of things that you associate with grow, and it could be words, it could be sentences, right? That's what I asked you to do. Also, I just wanted to say about the time that we're taking to do this. So I gave you 5 minutes in terms of doing the free write, and I gave you 7 minutes to make this list. Now, I know these time constraints could seem like, oh, I can't do anything in this time, because we're used to preparing for things when we want to put our best foot forward, right? We're used to taking time, but sometimes we're overthinking that, and this is a creative process where we push ourselves without even thinking about how long it's taking. And sometimes when we refine, or we could come back later and we could refine, but sometimes when we just push ourselves in that moment, then we just allow whatever is inside to come out. So I made a list of 15 things. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do as well, it doesn't have to be 15 things, whatever takes up the 7 minutes. But the last thing I want you to do is think of a wise woman, right? So if you were like a wise woman, what would you say to yourself? Or if not, if you were a wise woman, if a woman was talking to you, or if you was giving advice to someone else, yeah, let's say that, let's stick with that. If you were this wise matriarch, this healing mama woman, what wise thing would you say to yourself about healing? Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute to think about that, and then just write that down. Okay, see you again. All right, and then this is the sharing stage. So just gonna read you what I've got. As I said, it's just the first draft, but it's called Growing Pains. Growing pains, crawling, falling down and getting back up again, blood dried on kneecaps, riding around in circles the very first time I rode without stabilizers. It is well done, congratulations and celebrations. It is looking back and not even remembering how I managed to get this far. It is fear, overcoming fear, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It is tears, not listening when they said you were too good for him. Realizing for the first time that you are too good for him. Okay, so it's not listening when they said you are too good for him. It is realizing for the first time that you are too good for him. It is looking back after dating him and thinking, I never thought I would get over him. It is more than boys, more than breakups. It is the sum of who I am today. Growing pains. All right, and so this is a first draft of a piece. And just essentially to remember the steps that we went through to get to this piece, we started off with a free write, not judging anything that we said, just looking at it or just writing for 5 minutes. After that, we came back, thought about a theme based on our free write. I came up with Growing Pains, and it would be great if you can do this as well. Use the same subject that I use, just to try. And then I came up with a list. I made a list of 15 things. I gave myself 7 minutes. And then after those 7 minutes, I then took 2 minutes to think about what I would say to myself if I was a wise woman, right? And we came up with this poem. So that's it for today. If you would like to share your poem, feel free to contact us. Check through our social media. We're going to have so many different things about well-being, about mental health, about wellness, about self-love, all these exciting sorts of things. But please definitely come back to Off the Record, OTR, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye.